Hi, everyone. It's great to be here live with you today for the next 30 minutes talking about the highest standard in AI. I am Dania Meira. I'm a founding member of the AI Guild, the go-to community for data and business professionals advancing AI adoption. Welcome to all of you who are joining us live. If you want, please be active and ask questions. We will answer them on the fly. Just type it in the comments. With me is Josef. He's an AI Guild member based in Austria. And he has worked for 20 years in different industry areas for startups and established companies. He founded the SocialTechLab during his research work in 2019. SocialTechLab supports organizations in implementing trustworthy AI with the holistic framework, which combines methodologies from interdisciplinary professions like computer science, innovation, psychology, and sociology. Thank you for joining me in this fireside chat, Joseph.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much, Dania, for inviting me to this nice, great talk, and as well a warm welcome to everyone out there who's joining us today in our conversation. Thank you.
Yes, cool. So maybe to get started, would you share with us about your research and how you became interested in the topic of the trustworthy AI?
Yes, of course. Thank you. So actually, I founded SocialTechLab 2019 based on research work that I have done. And the idea of SocialTechLab is actually to connect and to create a bridge between academia and corporates and organizations regarding the social impacts of digital technologies. So therefore, currently we are offering workshops like in artificial intelligence ethics, and as well the consultancy for implementation of the Trustworthy AI implementation framework, the TAII Framework, that was initiated and developed by myself. And as well, on top of that, we are involved in research projects. So just from customers that we have, we are partnering with universities, organizations that can be established companies, but as well startups, mainly, of course, in the tech and especially in the artificial intelligence area. So we are using a holistic approach to assess social impacts of digital technology. And are actually mainly focusing on bottom-up research. So that means as well that we go into the companies, into the organization, trying to understand their pains and their needs as well, and to analyze that. And based on this, we are creating solutions. So,
okay. Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
No worries. So as you mentioned before, so my name is Josef Baker-Brunnbauer. I founded SocialTechLab. And today I also want to speak about the Trustworthy AI, the TAII Framework as well. But before doing this, actually, I also want to speak a bit about why do we speak about Trustworthy AI in general, because that is recently quite much in the media, depending maybe where you are based in the world. But before we actually speak about trustworthy AI, I even want to go one step backwards and just as well to explain how we understand AI, because just if we speak about AI systems, in the media, some people are speaking about the robots and the Terminators who are attacking others, say AI technology will solve all world problems. It sounds very promising. But everyone has different understanding. And even as well, to be honest, if you look at SocialTechLab, probably we also will have our own definition about AI systems. But we define actually AI systems as socio-technical systems. Those impact is not only based on design, so it's also instead it considers the broader environment, including as well purpose, training data, functionality, scale of deployment, but also the broader organizational, societal, and legal context. So that sounds maybe a bit difficult, but to even shorten it, so to say, it is also including social impacts and the society as well as a main focus as well, and not only the technical considerations. On top of that, actually, we also need to deal with new ethical challenges, because when we think about ethics or AI ethics, we also need to think about new challenges, let's say like ethics of data, algorithms, ethics of practices and resources. So also when we speak about AI ethics, it's only a small part about ethics. And that's also very important to understand when we partner or work with organizations, that AI ethics is not just, let's say, a software update or something what you implement over the weekend. So it is actually a core module or a core value, first of all, about your values within the organization, but as well how it will influence your whole organizational structure, system, the value proposition. So that is why it is, or it takes more point and aspects to consider. But coming back to trustworthy AI, I mean, why we are focusing as well on trustworthy AI is because we think as well that to build trust is a major essential factor for any organization. Because if you look, let's say, inside the organization, while it's about trust building, it's about your reputation, but as well your customers or consumers, they need to have trust in you and your organization, but as well in your product, because they either want to buy it, but even want to use it. And of course, if you think about yourself, we use products that we trust. So that is why we think that trustworthy AI from that point of aspect is a very core component when we speak about AI ethics. And as well, what is important to consider when we speak about trustworthy AI and AI ethics as well, not only intended consequences, but also to think about unintended or even unconscious consequences, because that is actually even more a bigger challenge, first of all, to consider,
Yes.
to think about, or to be aware of it. And based off that, to finish our understanding about AI ethics and trustworthy AI, as well to highlight, for example, as we are following the approach of the European Commission as well, how we define or how they define as well trustworthy AI. Because they say also that we, or within Europe, we should also shape an ecosystem of trust based off the European fundamental rights and rules that also give users the trust and the confidence to use AI systems. And then as well, they highlight as well that it should be lawful, ethical, and robust. So that is also important, also not only, let's say, in the design or in the development. So that is also for the whole life cycle. So that is when we think about just when you start developing or creating ideas till the development, the deployment, and as well in the end of life of the system. So that is also important to understand when we speak with organizations, that is not only for the development or the implementation. So that is really over the whole life cycle. And as well, trustworthy AI should also then describe human-centric and trustful development of AI systems, and it should minimize the risk.
Yes, thank you, Joseph, because this is very important that we understand what is the concept, let's say, that we are talking about. Yeah. And yes, there are a lot of incentives business-wise to get the trust of customers. Also, more regulations coming up. So this is pretty much a hot topic. The thing is that companies, or more specifically, like data scientists and the stakeholders in the company, they need practical tools, right, to implement this.
Yeah.
There are some kind of abstract frameworks or ideas, but really to realize this practical aspect of ethics or trustworthy AI, we we would like to learn more about your framework, the TAII framework. Can you tell us a bit about it?
Yes, sure. Thank you. So, as you said, actually, it's very important as well to understand from a point of an organization how to make the first steps, how to initiate, let's say, the implementation of AI ethics and trustworthy AI. So, therefore, research that we have conducted showed actually that there is a huge gap between, let's say, already existing research, which is heavily increasing within the last months and years, but the implementation within companies, of course, is lagging. So, and to create actually this or to close this gap, that was actually the original initiative for the development of the holistic TAII framework that you can find on our website as well. There's an infographic as well. But so what we discovered actually during our research in the beginning is that the practical experience within AI system developer companies within Europe is quite much behind than probably many will think about. So we assessed and several interviews of different industry areas for AI system developing companies. And actually, sometimes it was even hard to speak about the corporate values, you know. So, and as well, even if you speak about the corporate values, it is important that they are not only on a paper. So they need also to be implemented. They need to be within the company, you know, all of the employees actually should live them. There should be an alignment of all of the values. And probably we all know that sounds very easy, but the implementation of that is already quite challenging. But that is, for example, something what we identified. But there were, of course, others challenges ahead, like, for example, even the questions of resources and prioritization. How will the management, for example, prioritize AI ethics within their companies? You know, is that a high priority? Is that a nice to have? So there are so many discussions for, let's say, there's not always an answer within organizations. And then, of course, there are showing up new challenges, for example, when we speak about accountability. Because even when we speak about implementing of AI ethics, it was not really clear, for example, who's accountable for the outcome of the AI systems, and even who's responsible during the development phase, for example. Often it would have been seen from the management that, let's say, data scientists or during the development phase, that this needs to be considered. But that also raises actually new challenges and questions, like what is the responsibility, for example, about data scientists and software engineers, because can a technical engineer, for example, consider all social ethical aspects, you know? So that showed probably that there was a huge need for diversity as well, let's say, within the development teams. And based on this, of course, there were also questions about, like, who should steer all the implementation of AI ethics within companies, you know? There are proposals about implementing AI ethics officers, for example, or ethics managers. And of course, then it is a question like, where will you place this position? And may this really arise within the next years, let's say, for the AI system development companies? And what kind of professions will actually these people need? You know, is this as well one person, or is it a diverse team with different background? So as you can see, just of some bringing up some proposals or ideas, it's quite many contradictions, and, let's say, as well, question marks how to handle this and implement this within companies. But that is something what we started to tackle with the development of the framework. And the TAII framework consists actually of 12 steps. So I probably will not be able to explain now all steps in detail, because that is, unfortunately, let's say, probably not enough time at the moment. But I can just highlight some as well, to see what is probably as well interesting for the audience. And
Okay.
maybe if somebody has as well questions, so just please feel free as well to ask for the framework or some of the points. There is an infographic available at SocialTechLab.eu, it's the website, which is probably giving you a very clear, rough overview about the 12 steps, which are as well, let's say, a guidance for people who want to implement trustworthy AI within their organization. But I need also to say it's not a blueprint that you can take for any industry with any technology and just, let's say, go through and copy paste. Because depending on the technology, even on the application context, AI technology can be classified and understood and even have different social implications. So
Yeah,
that is really
definitely.
depending then on the use case exactly how you really can implement it on that way. But yeah, sorry.
Yes, and I think that for sure this is a topic that, as you were saying, depends on each of the use cases. And might be an interesting idea if also the audience is interested to develop this in a different format. Potentially, we can run some online workshop also to dive deep or to look at some examples. So let us know if you're interested in this. We can also organize it together, the Social Tech Lab and the AI Guild. I am for sure interested.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning this. That is, I think, definitely a great idea. And as well for different professions out there, but also, let's say, if you develop AI systems and you are interested in evaluating the framework, so just come back to us and we can see how to make it possible to organize something that fits you. But just speaking quickly about, let's say, the framework as well. Well, the first step actually of the framework is about to define, analyze, and to list the corporate values that I mentioned already before. So actually, as you see, it's the first step. Shouldn't be a big challenge, let's say, what maybe some people will think, but based on research, what we have done as well in our consultancy projects, is actually already challenging for some of the organizations, let's say, to start on that point to align about this. But the next step actually is about to analyze the business model, because maybe some people will now ask, okay, why is he speaking about the business model? I'm here to speak about trustworthy AI. Where's the connect to this, But the thing is, AI technology, even if it's in your product or service included, it has more influence within all of your business model sections. So it can also, let's say, influence as well your supply chain, for example, even your partners, your distribution. So this is why it is very important to understand not only to work on the technology within your value proposition, but as well to have a big overview to see on what else of the points AI technology will influence in a good or in a bad way, but even as well where it will create additional maybe revenue possibilities, but
Yeah.
even new market or customer opportunities, because that is important as well here in that step, to broaden a bit the perspective, to bring in a bit the economical understanding as well, actually, why you are developing the AI system and how it is also actually contributing in that way.
Yes, for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, any business will do things that will feed, let's say, the business model. So I like the approach because, as you mentioned, it's a holistic approach and it looks from the business perspective on why you are using AI and how you are using AI. It reminds me of that story from Facebook that they were looking into the hate speech in the platform, and in the end they did not deploy something to let's say, block or diminish the propagation of those kind of posts because they were driving engagement, and engagement is their main metric also for business.
Yeah.
So in the end, it doesn't matter what is going to or how they're going to attack this problem. It just matters that it doesn't touch the engagement, which is related to their business model. So yeah, you can see that it all goes back to that, or the company values and so on. So it is really, really interesting, and I like it that you're starting from those, let's say, big blocks that define the company overall, not only the technical or AI aspects that the company is developing.
Yeah. So the third step, actually, the system brief overview, is about as well to reflect within your organization, for example, what is actually the purpose of your AI system? Because quite often, let's say, it is tech driven, there are new innovations, new technology that you want actually maybe to try out or to implement, and that is totally understandable. But on top of that, actually, it is important to ask yourself as well, what is actually the purpose of the system? What is the goal? Why do we want to develop this? And as well, let's see, to consider already on that point as well, like what kind of data, for example, do I need, within my AI system? So that can be, of course, input data, training data, and just to make a short note, then you can already as well to think about bias data, for example. I don't want to go now in deeper in that way, but already on that point, you should create awareness as well, like
Yes.
how are the connections in between all of the data, and how to minimize the risk from the beginning. Not only, let's say, when you are in the development phase and maybe the engineers are sitting on the table and designing and shaping the concept. So that is already from the beginning, let's say, to consider input data as well. Let's see how to reduce bias within data to create really trustworthy AI systems. And maybe just to go to the next step, to shorten a bit here, which is the stakeholder analysis part, which is mainly about diversity as well. Because already at that point, we think it's important to align like who's actually involved within the company for the AI system development. But not only within the company, you will probably have partners as well, or even in the deployment phase, or even within the society, who is actually, let's say, the contributor of the system, but who is also the consumer or the user. And based on this, also within your organization, it's the question, how can you guarantee diversity, or what kind of level of diversity do you want to have, depending on maybe professional education background, but as well on age, on cultures, different mindsets. So there are many wheels where you can actually tackle and look from different perspectives on that point of view, because the main goal as well of implementing AI ethics and trustworthy AI is as well to have a solution that fits all of us, and not only a small group, let's say, or a focus group which exclude others. So that should actually not really happen. So
Yeah, for sure.
I want just to skip some points, but because I think time is a bit rushing as well. But what I want to highlight next, which is the seventh point, actually, is about the common good, because that is also very important, which differentiates this framework from others.
Okay.
Because it is as well to consider, for example, the social impact and the dependencies to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So already when you use the framework, you will analyze your product, in which of those goals it will contribute in a positive or in a negative way. And as well, let's say, if you identify negative one, which is not bad at all from the beginning, because you just identified, the worst situation would probably be if you have it and you don't know it, or you hide it, or something like this. So just be aware about something and try to turn it into a positive one, that's actually, let's say, an approach which is well welcomed. So therefore, there's an assessment of the implications of the Sustainable Development Goals, but as well of the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights. So
Nice.
because it's also important when we see many tech proposals and technologies already in action, which is maybe sometimes, let's say, resource optimization, and maybe it is increasing on growth and revenue, but you also need to see or to look on the other side of the medal. And if, let's say, people maybe either will lose their jobs or will need to reskill, de-skill, or even, let's say, if it's changing the environment or the ecosystems. And therefore, I have quite many examples to give on that topic. From our point of view, we think that this needs also to be taken into the account of an AI system developer. And so that's why this is in that point of the framework, that the AI system developer already considered this at that point, and not, let's say, maybe afterwards when it's too late and the product is already on the market.
Yeah.
And then we need to deal with the results of the implementation.
Yeah, no, this is also very important that, like you said, first identify and be aware before the product is ready and it's already on the market. Yeah, for sure. That makes a lot of difference.
Yeah.
We have a couple of minutes and I don't see any questions on the chat, but I do have a question myself. So maybe you can also share with us some thoughts about the upcoming regulation from the EU Commission. So what do you think could be the impact of this? And because what I understand mainly is that the regulation talks about different use cases and classifies their risk. Is that correct?
Exactly. So the proposal actually refers, for example, to a risk classification that AI systems will be classified on 4 risk levels. So either minimal risk, limited risk, high risk, and unacceptable risk. So if the system should be rated as unacceptable, it will be banned completely, let's say. So it will not be allowed to deploy it on the European market. But what is quite interesting, for example, are the high-risk applications. Because if your product might be assessed as a high-risk application, then you will need to undergo an assessment. And based on this, you need to be then listed in a European database. And you finally need also to apply to get the CE marking, as we already know it from other products, that you are allowed to develop and deploy the product within the European Union market. So that is something what, on the one side, company needs to consider, because if you start applying, let's say, and your product is already developed, you need actually to go quite many steps backwards, So if you wait till, let's say, because currently the regulation is a proposal, so it will still take a bit of time when this will be placed into international and national law, which is another challenge we haven't talked about at the moment. But the thing is, if you have a development life cycle, for example, like in medical or in automotive industries, which is quite long, you need already to work on that topic at the moment, because you will also need to change procedures, you will need to change processes. And even on top, you will probably need new employees with different skill set, to organize the implementation of AI ethics, of trustworthy AI. And all this, let's say, as well, depending on the organizational structure and on the size of the company, that will take time to implement as well beforehand.
Yes.
So that's as well something where the framework, let's say, might help such organizations, to take the first steps. Also, let's say, for the ones who just want to get a first overview and understanding, like, okay, what is actually coming towards us, what we maybe don't need to fulfill at the moment, but we need to get prepared. And
Mhm.
another important aspect actually is that this will also affect foreign companies who want to sell within the European market. So also, if
Yes.
you are currently, let's say, developing the product somewhere outside Europe, but you want to target this market and sell your application there, you also will need to assess which laws and which categories, for example, your AI system might be involved with, and what kind of implications you will need to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting time because now, as I said, it's still a proposal and things are still not clear. So there's a lot that is still abstract, and kind of everyone is thinking about what should we do or what should we be looking at, because exactly, if it comes in 2 years or something like this, we cannot just throw away everything that we developed during this time. So you want to be as prepared as possible. So when it comes, when it's really enforced as law, then you already have something prepared for it. Yeah, for sure. Yes.
Exactly.
I think that our time for today is done, unfortunately, because we have a lot more. So yes, let us know if you would like to hear more about this, and also about having a workshop to bring more examples and practical aspects. We can organize it. And thank you for spending some minutes of your lunch break today with us. Thank you, Joseph, for the insightful exchange.
Thank you very much, Dania, for the invitation. And as well, out there, the participants, thank you very much for joining us in your lunch break. And yeah, if you're interested in undergoing any workshops about Trustworthy AI, TAII Framework evaluation, just follow up with us and let's see what we will make happen.
Cool. Yes. Thank you, and have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.